Good afternoon, good evening, good whatever it is, wherever you are. We are back. The Adam Sachs Show, starring Adam Michael Sachs.
Starring me, Adam Sachs, yeah.
Starring you.
You can call me, Adam Sachs, at 1-800-340-7320. That's 1-800-340-7320. And you can email me, adam@adamlawyer.com. Check me out on the World Wide Web at www.adamlawyer.com, and Facebook as well, of course. Now, today I went to a very yucky little courthouse in West Covina, California, and I was fighting a traffic ticket. This is something that lawyers got involved in gradually. There are some lawyers who specialize in it. I do it kind of as a sidekick, lark hobby, I guess. But I have to say that a lot of the tickets are very unjustified. But there actually is a lot of pressure, believe it or not, because of revenue, because of money, on counties, put pressure on the police to write tickets. And it's big money. It's huge money.
Are there quotas? We always hear, hey, they got to do their quotas.
I don't know if there's a quota, but I'm telling you, they get called in. And they go, hey, last week you wrote 24 tickets. This week it's only 16. What's going on? You know?
Yeah.
And I think that the cops are under a lot of pressure for that. If you look at DUIs, which is kind of a ticket, you get pulled over, right?
Yeah.
It's obviously a more serious crime, but that is a cottage industry. The county and the state fine you. You have to do school. You have to pay special court assessments, which are actually usually more than the fines. And by the time you're done with it, it's thousands and thousands of dollars. When you talk about a state like California, but this is also true of most of the states in the country, California and the other states are financially very overextended. They're doing all kinds of services they don't have the money for. They're borrowing money. They're in deficit spending. And so when they get thousands of dollars for tickets, that's a very significant and important source of revenue for them. And when you look at the sheer quantity, as I said, you think about how many courthouses there are in a place like Los Angeles. And here I am in this little pipsqueak of a courthouse, West Covina, and they've got either 2 or 3 or 4 courtrooms, when each one is packed full of people. So that's maybe 20, 30, 40, or 50 cases per courtroom. And, each case, it's not, $25 anymore. Each case is hundreds of dollars. The more significant tickets are $500 and $700. And then if you miss the court date, they can give you penalties that are phenomenal, Howard. Phenomenal.
Who's that?
We're talking about, quite seriously, tickets, assessments that on top of the ticket are $2,000. So you could miss your court date, it goes to this collections thing, and your $600 ticket is now $2,600, plus interest and penalties and assessments. And they got you because if you don't pay it eventually, you don't have a license anymore, you can't register your car, et cetera, et cetera.
So let's talk about how we get there, because that's at the end result,
Right.
So let's start with the beginning. Tickets, we all get them. If you're driving,
Just mathematical.
Just mathematically, it's your day. It may be your day once every 10 years, once every few years, whatever. It's kind of like the odds of getting in a fender bender or a car wreck. If you're on the streets, you are exposed. And probably most of the tickets that that go out that we see are like speed tickets. So today we're going to talk about the types of tickets, how they work, how the flaws in them, how to beat them. With speeding, you can have a speed gun.
Right.
We talked a couple weeks ago how people driving to Vegas, they'll have a CHP, California Highway Patrol, sitting underneath a bridge.
Right.
On the side of the road, on the other side of the bridge, with their gun sitting there, the speed gun. So when you're flying down 80 miles an hour, and you come on the other side of that little bridge, boom, they got you because you didn't see them.
Right, and there's 2 kinds. There's Doppler radar, which is essentially shooting a radio wave at your car, and then it bounces back. And then there's another kind called LiDAR, which is a laser. laser radar.
Okay.
Now, this is another one of these times that you confront technology. This is also true of DUI, for example, with a breath test, where there's a machine that you blow into. Here, people essentially are coming up against a machine. And the cop says to you, I clocked you at, 85 miles an hour. And that sounds like, you're pretty screwed. There's not really much that you can do with that. One of the other things that police do is they can pace you, which means that they can drive near you or behind you, and they're experts, supposedly, at estimating your speed based also on their speed. That's called pacing. And then there are some police that actually will do it just on looking. So in other words, the cop actually sees you drive by, and he's able to tell your speed, and in particular from, let's say, 2 different points on the road. So in other words, if you pass point A on the road and then you get to point B on the road and he's going, 1,001, 1,002, and it estimates that it took you, 3 seconds to get from the first point to the second point, he can then extrapolate that you must have been speeding at 72 miles an hour or whatever it is.
Let's start with the speed gun then. Where they're using the speed gun for the laser, or what's that other thing you mentioned?
LiDAR.
Is LiDAR laser?
Laser radar.
Okay. So normally that's got to be posted, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't?
No, they're allowed to use technology. The only thing that has to be posted, generally speaking, is the speed limit. And by the way, that doesn't have to necessarily be posted. There are certain calculations that are standardized, and you can presume that if you're on a highway or a freeway, that the speed limit is 65. If you're on a multi-lane road with 2 lanes on either side, let's say there's no particular traffic markings, you can assume that the speed limit is 45. I mean, school zone is typically 20 or 25. So there are certain calculations. But if you look at a modern state like California, you will see postings, definitely. And they're aware of that. And there are lawyers who try to fight speeding that there was no notice or no posting. And that's generally a loser, I'm sorry to say.
What if the speed limit is not posted?
Well, that's just what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean,
there are lawyers who fought that. I've seen that.
Should use your common sense of how fast you should be going?
That's not going to work for you. If it's the 2-lane road, it's going to be 40. If it's the 4-lane road, it's going to be 45. I mean, we know this. And the cops are not after that kind of stuff generally anyway. There's a thing where they will take you in for what they call unsafe driving, which is too many lane changes or erratic. Usually under unsafe driving, they pull you over because they think you might be drinking and driving. And if they don't smell alcohol, and if they don't form the opinion that you've been drinking and driving, most of the time they'll just let you go. But if the cop's nasty, he can write you a ticket for unsafe driving or unsafe lane changing.
What's a speed trap?
Speed trap is what you kind of described. There are counties that are very small that intersect on certain parts of roads and so forth. And so, for example, they'll put a police officer under a bridge, or he's sort of hiding behind it. And sometimes they'll do it in partnership with another officer who's further down the road. And so the first officer clocks you, and the second officer stops you and gives you the ticket. And they call it like a trap because it's sort of an ambush, They're sort of lying in wait. And then you kind of zoom by, and then they kind of spring the trap on you. I remember seeing in New Jersey where they had speed traps like this on the turnpikes, and they would pull over sets of cars. So they would actually have people speeding so consistently that the first officer would mark, and the second officer would pull over 5 cars. Literally 5 cars at the same time. All 5 of them would be pulled over. And they would give them all the same ticket because they had all been going at the same speed, which was, past the legal limit.
We beat a speed trap ticket
Right.
several months ago. And it was a situation where it was a long, wide street. The speed limit was not posted on either direction. And it was kind of like coming out of a commercial area into a residential with apartment buildings on both sides, and then all of a sudden a school shows up at the end of where you'd be flying. So I was driving, and I was taking a ride in Uber a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
And I said to the driver, I said, where we're going right now, slow down.
There's a trap.
We are in it.
Yeah.
Right now, we are in the speed trap.
That's very kind to your driver.
And he said, well, what do you mean? And by that time,
Said,
we were,
slow down,
we were at
dum-dum
the
is
end
what
of the
I mean.
speed trap,
Yeah.
past the school. There was the big parking lot for the big shopping center.
Mm-hmm.
And there was 5 cop units there with 5 cars. I go, see, there it is.
Right.
There it is.
Well, it also means that, think about a police officer who patrols the same part of town very often. So he kind of knows, certain roads that people tend to speed on, or things like very big straightaways, or people coming off a freeway, going into a more residential area or commercial area. And, sometimes that's when you see when they put speed bumps on the road to prevent people from like racing or going too fast or whatever. And they know it. And again, as we said before, a lot of the police, I think, are under some kind of pressure to write tickets consistently. And if you're an officer and you've got, let's say, 2 hours left in your shift, maybe you want to go into one of these places because you know that if you just sit there a couple of minutes, you can get a couple of tickets written. And, for a police officer, that's something that they're expected to do, and it's necessary for them to, be considered to be doing their job properly.
There's a new trick in California. I saw it about a week ago. I think I was going over to you for a meeting of some sort.
Right.
And the trick is all white California Highway Patrol car.
Really?
All white.
So you don't know that it's a cop car?
I saw there, and the only thing that gave it away was the wires and the lights on the top.
Oh, wow.
I went, wait a second, what happened to black and white so you can pick them out? It was all white.
I wonder if that's the reason.
Now, when you go to Nevada, when you cross the border, those highway patrol, they're all white.
Interesting.
So you can't just rely on that anymore. Now, isn't it true that the type of devices they use to clock you or try to deduce what speed you are, it all depends upon the location of where they're at?
Well, there's a lot of factors, but one of the interesting factors, like the DUI machines, is that the software in these devices is proprietary, which means that we don't necessarily know what it is. It's not released to the public, and we don't necessarily know what they do with that information and how they process it. And there are apparently machines, and this is something that I check very often at trial, that the machine was not calibrated correctly. The officers are supposed to take these radar machines periodically and make sure that they're working properly and that they're calibrated properly. And I've had a few examples. I went into the court, and it was a speeding ticket with radar. And I said to the officer, can I see the calibration of your radar device? The number of the radar device is actually written on the ticket. That's sort of like a serial number that identifies that machine. And it's number, 392, which I think means that that's the 392nd machine that the LAPD has. And I say, can I see the calibration? And not so infrequently, the officer says, oh, I didn't bring it. And that's pretty much the end of the ticket. Now, another interesting example, something that people are not aware of, is at the side of the road, very often officers will use psychology when they pull you over, and they'll say, sir, do you know why I pulled you over? And the answer to that is no. You don't want to get into this because you're only going to give him more information. So you say...
Because you smelled marijuana in my car.
Yeah, not that's a little,
no, that was
a little too suggestion, but thanks for telling me.
Yeah, you got marijuana.
You don't want to start giving him new things to think about. But the correct answer is no, and the officer will say, I clocked you on my radar, LiDAR, whatever, doing 91. And the correct response is, wow, I'm really surprised to hear that. Would you mind showing me the reading? And the reading is like an LED, and if the officer has the reading from the gun or his the box of the radar machine, it's technically up to him, but it depends on your courtesy. He actually can take you back to his car and show you the reading. Now, don't get nasty because he doesn't have to. And if you ask, you have to be polite. But I have talked to many people that have asked to see the reading, and the officer took them back to the car and either showed it to them or took them back to the car and couldn't show it to them.
And arrested them.
Didn't arrest them. It changed the nature of the game with the ticket, where the officer said, well, I don't know why the display is off, but I know I got you at 72. Okay?
And all of this is great in theory because, we're always panicked.
Right.
Or like, oh my God, we just got pulled over again,
Yeah, this is going to ruin my life.
Your blood pressure goes
my
up.
Insurance.
And all of a sudden you're supposed to be thinking, oh man, what do I think? What do I say to the cop? What do I don't say to the cop? That kind of thing, Now, aren't some devices manufactured so that it's for moving, they're moving with the car versus stationary?
Right. Well, that's
and that
the
makes
one,
a difference in the reading?
Again, when I talked about the cop pacing you,
Uh-huh.
there's another kind of more sophisticated radar where the cop is actually, as you say, driving. So his car is moving, and then he's hitting you with the Doppler radar, and the radar machine is doing a complex calculation where it's considering the speed of the police car because it's moving, and then it's using that as part of the Doppler calculation to calculate how fast you're going. So it has to take out the calculation of its own speed.
And do they have speed guns that would get you going in the opposite direction? So
Yes, of course. They
so
got
they've
them all.
got cops sitting like they're facing
Well, it's
north.
just which way they aim it,
And
basically.
then there's cars coming south, and that's the ones they want, and
That's
they're going to nail the ones coming south.
That's just the gun. That's just which way it's aimed. And it's not always a gun. A lot of them just sort of hang out the window, and they have these little antenna type things.
Uh-huh.
So a cop can sit on the side of the road and judge the other side of the road or whichever direction. But the thing is, as I've explained, based on various different factors, even if it's radar, especially if it's pacing, especially if it's ambiguous like unsafe driving or whatever, I fight these all the time very successfully. And, people are in the situation very often where they haven't had tickets in a long time. And if you haven't, you have the option potentially to go to what they call traffic school. In California, traffic school is available once every 18 months. And if you get a ticket and you don't want to fight it, or you're not that keen, or you didn't get that many tickets, you can go to traffic school. It's pretty expensive with the court costs and the traffic school costs.
It's always expensive.
Of course, but it wipes your ticket away, which is a good thing.
And your bank account.
I would say it's better not to do it because you can only do it once every 18 months. You want to save it if you can. And second of all, this is an interesting problem. It doesn't apply to commercial drivers. It used to, but it doesn't anymore. If you're a commercial driver, you cannot have a ticket erased by traffic school. So I advise commercial drivers especially, because it's your license, for God's sake, it's your whole career right there, you have got to fight it. And you've got to get an attorney if you can and fight the cases, because your option of pleading guilty and paying it does not give you an option of traffic school. And so that's really a problem.
So let's talk about the pacing thing as far as, because it's a visual, and what's important as far as beating the ticket itself. And you have to really kind of be aware of this stuff when you think about it afterwards. What was the road conditions? Wet, dry?
Right.
What was the traffic conditions, right?
Well, a good thing you should think about, especially if you want to fight it, and you should always fight it, is you should take some pictures. Nowadays, when I was a kid, you had to figure out where your camera was, and you had to make sure you had film and a tripod. Nowadays, you've got a camera. It's in your phone. So if you're there and you've gotten a ticket and, you're kind of getting your act together to leave, I think it's always a good idea to snap a couple of photos if you can, or certainly to go back later or the next day or something. But you want to remember, like you say, the weather condition.
Why?
Well, it has everything to do with the defense of the ticket, the circumstances.
What's weather got to do with it?
Well, you tell the judge a different story about, that it was reduced visibility, or who knows. Well, maybe for the cop, for example. It certainly affects the circumstance to remember not only the weather, but what the road looks like, the curves, where the lights are, where the signs are. If you have these things and you can present them at court, at the very least, you'll blow the judge's mind. And so that's a good thing.
What if it's raining outside?
Well, actually, with respect to speeding, I'm afraid that rain is probably mitigating against. If you are trying to defend going too fast and you're going to show that it was raining, actually, when it's raining, you should probably go slower.
Yeah, but wouldn't the rain block somebody's view, the clarity?
Well, that you wanted to say the cop didn't have a good view of what was going on.
So that would be a defense.
Potential.
How about the cars between you and the cop?
Well, there's always the different factors of other distractions and so forth. A lot of people come up with defenses that blame other drivers, which is that the reason that they had to do something and go into the wrong lane or to stop short or whatever it was, or even to speed, was to get out of a dangerous situation. I mean, if there's a reckless driver behind you and he's doing something strange, you may have to speed past the limit to get away from him. And although you'd be breaking the law by speeding, technically that would be like an affirmative defense. You could say, yeah, I was speeding, but I had a damn good reason to do it. I had to get away from Mr. Crazy who was about to crack me up in the back or whatever. So that's always a possibility.
So thinking while you're driving after you get that ticket, and while you have that fresh recall in your mind,
Right.
it's important to think about what just happened. Because now you have to get creative with your defense to go beat the ticket.
Right.
Think about where the cop was, if you even knew where he was at, or if you ever saw him, because that will help you out also. If there was 5 cars between you and the cop, or 3 cars, or 2 cars to block his view, how could he not have a clear view of your car to judge how fast you are going with 3 or 4 cars in between?
The other thing I've always seen about the cops is, remember, they write lots and lots and lots of tickets. So when you finally come to court, which could be 6 months later, he does not remember you. He really doesn't, unless you were very unusual, and you don't want to be unusual. On the other hand, this was a big day for you, and you're taking pictures. It's always smart to write some notes down. I always ask my clients, especially when the ticket is pretty fresh, only a few days old, I always tell them, I want you to write in your own words, in a few paragraphs, what happened, and as much detail as you can remember. And you come up with, who was in the car, and what the roads were like, and what happened, and what the cop said. And all these little factors are significant because you're going to come to court super prepared, and the cop's going to come relatively unprepared. Because he's going to look at the ticket. He remembers that he wrote a speeding ticket to you, but he doesn't remember anything much else. He may have written himself a few notes. But if you think he remembers you, he really doesn't, because he does so many.
And that's a really good technique when you do get a ticket, and let's say you are going to fight it.
Yeah, be unexceptional.
Get it continued.
Oh, that's another story.
Get a continuance. Usually get one or 2 automatic, but ask the court for a continuance. Not the court, it's the clerk, the traffic clerk. You'll get it, because what that will do, it will now create a longer period of time and a gap for this cop's memory from the day that he wrote it to that ticket 9 months ago. Or
Right.
6 months ago, the hundreds of tickets, and he writes hundreds. And that will maximize your ability for him not to have any recall about your particular situation. Another technique they do is stakeouts. What's a stakeout?
Well, stakeout, I'm not sure exactly which version you mean, but I definitely went to a party that was at a club in Burbank, and it was pretty well advertised that this party was happening, and apparently multiple police officers waited in a stakeout outside of the parking lot of this party.
So a stakeout means someone is, quote unquote, staking you out, waiting, lying in wait,
Yeah.
watching your movements, waiting for you to do
Well,
something.
not you exactly specifically, let's say, but they knew that this bar was going to start closing at around midnight, 1 o'clock. And
Closing
they knew,
time.
And they knew that the party had been attended by hundreds of people with free-flowing alcohol. And so when that time rolled around, there were multiple police cars waiting. And as the people drove off, they were being pulled over rather systematically. And they were all, DUIs.
They did that to the Elks Lodge in Santa Barbara one year.
There you go.
It was New Year's Eve. So they got,
That's a safe bet.
1,000 people showing up at the big hall, and it ended the last round, and they closed it down at like 1 o'clock, 1:30, and the CHP was just sitting out there waiting for everybody to get into their car, and as soon as they hit the main street, a couple blocks away, they pulled them all over, and they made a nice big killing that night.
Right.
Another stakeout situation is a policeman will sit at a certain location observing, let's say, a left turn only sign or a no U-turn sign intersection, where it is known that people will ignore those signs. So he'll sit, instead of making the no left turn where the sign sits, you make that left turn. As soon as you go 2 or 3 blocks, he's sitting there because he saw you from 3 blocks away. He's got a clear line of vision watching you ignore that sign and doing the opposite. And they're waiting there for you. They're doing that stakeout. So as soon as you pull over, they go, what you pulling me over? Well, did you see that sign there? It says no left turn, right turn only. You did the left turn. Why'd you do it? Because it's a pain in the ass to turn right and make a U-turn, go 2 blocks, and it's a big street. What's the big deal?
Right.
But it's like a business district thing, and God knows what else, some crazy rules they got there. So he's sitting there watching for each one to come over. He doesn't have to ride his bike anywhere. He just looks at you, points, put on the light, pulls you over, and he's writing 30 a day.
It's a lot.
Just from a right-hand turn lane from coming out of a neighborhood into a business district, So they're doing all of that stuff. Another one is they get you on a downhill.
Oh, classic.
There's a street here in Los Angeles called Slauson, and it's really long. But part of it comes down from a hill. And halfway down the hill, when you got your speed, there's 2 parochial schools there.
Wow.
Elementary.
At the bottom of the hill.
No, in the middle, when you get your speed up.
Oh, there you go.
So just so you're coming down the middle, and that's when you see the 35 miles an hour only, not before.
That's a police dream come true.
And they have these side streets where they have to pull in to go to the school, and that's where the cop sits there with the gun. So everybody's going 45 miles an hour on the 35, one after another, all day long, especially in the morning when people are going to work. Because by the time you get up to your speed or you wake up that you're in a school zone, too late, you're at 40 miles an hour, and now you see the red sign, the red light. And then once the word gets out, then people are now going slow there. That's no longer a speed trap.
Yeah, it's cruel. It's like inadvertent.
They move on elsewhere. How about road construction?
That's a very interesting one. There are many, many instances of people running over construction workers. And obviously everyone's very sensitive to that. And so they created these rules where the fines can be double or even triple when you're in a construction area, because they really want you to take it seriously. So even a minor speeding, such as going 30 and a 20, which would normally be $300, is now $900, because the theory is that you were putting construction workers in danger.
And the cops are sitting there
No.
waiting to do it.
No, I don't know. I think that the construction workers have like the cops as escorts or guards or sometimes. I mean, it's sort of like those DUI checkpoints where they block off a road or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There definitely is a higher level of awareness amongst construction areas. And I don't know if the cops are laying in wait like we described as ambushers or whatever, but they're definitely driving around, and they're driving through the construction, and they're coming over and saying hello to the guys. And they're very, very sensitive about this issue of people getting hurt during the construction. And the speed limit and the whole DUI thing is very strictly enforced.
Okay, let's do a commercial. This is Law Offices of Adam Michael Sachs. What's our phone number, Adam?
It's 1-800-340-7320. That's 1-800-340-7320.
And your email?
My email is adam@adamlawyer.com.
I wanted to take a second and thank some people who've been writing into us.
Okay.
So I want to thank Stephanie and Bruce and Richard.
What did Stephanie have to say?
Stephanie liked our show.
Oh, that's good.
I think she heard us on SoundCloud.
Oh, okay.
And
Bruce and Richard?
And John. And Dr. Richmond, especially Dr. Richmond. He got me straight on the Beach Boys stuff that we were talking about a couple weeks ago.
Oh, there you go.
I talked about Mike Love, and turns out the licenses were paid and all that stuff. But anyway, the Dr. Richmond got me all straightened out on that story. And thank you.
No, it's nice to get feedback directly from a show.
And Cynthia's written us a couple times.
Okay.
And Tom and Dino and Trevor, our biggest fans, they've been writing too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Everyone loves us. So give us a call. Call us,
Who
818.
are those last three? Tom and who?
Tom and Dino
And Trevor.
and Trevor.
It's an interesting combination.
Yeah, I know. Everyone's writing. Everyone's good. And we thank you for your call, your cards and letters. Give us a call. Write us with anything you want to hear about.
Well, I got people emailing me all kinds of crazy stuff.
Well, and we're going to do shows on the stuff that you're suggesting. I think
Definitely new show ideas.
I think Bruce and Richard suggested a couple things, and we're going to work on those. We mentioned a couple weeks ago about driving to Las Vegas.
Leaving Las Vegas.
And we mentioned earlier about getting the speed trap ticket, the speed gun ticket under the other side of the bridge. And with Las Vegas, they're more forgiving than most courts because they need the money. And they want the people coming to Las Vegas. They don't want people scared not to come to Vegas. So as long as you're not doing 120 miles an hour, if you're doing like 70, 75, 80, and depending upon where you're at, they are very forgiving.
I remember feeling very bad about this because when you live in New York, Vegas is too far. You go to Atlantic City.
Yeah.
And it's a very long trip all the way down to southern New Jersey. And, everyone's excited and getting ready to go. And then there are all these little counties with cops all along the way.
Yeah.
Trying to nail you for speeding.
Son, what are you doing here?
Just to ruin your weekend,
Yeah.
Just to throw a monkey wrench into your optimism,
Well, in California here, if they don't get you in Victorville, so you leave Los Angeles, you drive an hour, and you're out of Los Angeles. You're in an area called the High Desert.
High desert.
So if the cops don't get you in Victorville, because it's all open highway.
Right.
It's a desert. There's nothing anywhere.
Right.
So if they don't get you in Victorville, they can get you up the road in Barstow.
Barstow.
And Barstow takes you almost a little bit before the border. And if they don't get you in Barstow, they get you in Baker.
Right.
Baker's got that giant thermometer, the largest thermometer in the world.
Right.
If they don't get you in Baker, then the last stop is State Line.
Right.
And State Line, Nevada. And then if they don't get you there, so there's 4 opportunities.
4 big opportunities.
Right. And if they don't get you there, as soon as you cross that border,
You've escaped.
you've escaped except for about 5 miles down. Now the all white Nevada cars are there.
All right, so we're talking about different police now.
Yeah. So it's almost worse if you got nabbed in California. But in Las Vegas, as long as you're not drunk driving and they don't catch you with drugs and it's not a reckless driving type thing and you didn't get in a car wreck, you're 10, 15 miles over the speed limit, maybe even 20, they will let you plead it down.
Right.
They want your money. Remember we talked about money before? It's a business. They want your money, so they'll let you plead it down and make you happy, so you come back again.
I've actually done many cases where the big issue wasn't the fine, but the points. And I had drivers that were really scared about getting points because it would have hurt their commercial license, or they already had points. It would make things worse of losing their license or having insurance issues. And so I have often compromised with judges and officers that I'll have the guy plead guilty to something else or something less severe, and the county still gets the money, but the driver doesn't get the points. And that's a big one.
Yeah. Also, we mentioned speed gun earlier, and Adam mentioned the calibration.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
And something that's important to note is that if it's been too long between the day you got that ticket from the gun and its prior calibration, it raises the issue of the accuracy.
Of course.
If it's been too long, if it hasn't been maintained, it's definitely a viable defense.
Well, it's one of the many tools I have in my toolbox. And I definitely have been very successful in fighting speeding tickets of all kinds. Now, before we overdose on radar and speeding tickets, I want to point out that there are lots of other kinds of tickets.
Such as?
There's red lights.
Well, that's next on my
which
list.
includes red light cameras.
That's our next.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have been very successful at fighting those.
And that's where we are.
I have a lot of people who get tickets for illegal left turns and all that kind of nonsense, driving while using the cell phone, driving in the HOV lane, which you're not supposed to do. And these are all tickets that come up, and I fought them all successfully. And, even if you look at what happens in the courthouse, most people just plead guilty.
Because they don't know any better.
They just don't understand how to fight for their rights.
So,
and there are so many ways to get around guilt.
With the traffic tickets, let's talk about the yellow traffic tickets, because everybody is always beating yellow lights.
Yellow lights.
And what people don't understand is that traffic signals are computer calibrated according to where they are located. A busy intersection, business district, residential district, the speed limit for the area. All of those factors go in to calibrating a traffic light. And have you noticed how you go to some traffic lights, the yellow light's really long? Like really long.
It can be set that way.
And then other times you just started to push it where it was changing, and all of a sudden it goes to red. It goes real fast, the yellow light. That's because the calibration is different for each neighborhood. Now, what's interesting is that the calibrating of the lights are done by an independent company. And that's the flaw. That's the fly in the ointment, isn't it, Adam?
Well, that's the craziness of all. There's a very large company that gets contacted with cities and says to them, hey, Beverly Hills, I bet you guys need some revenue. We can set up a red light camera, and the cost to the city is nothing. So think about it. If the city had to buy the camera and the machine and install it and all that equipment and everything, it had to do it in multiple places, this company pays for all of that. And then they set it up, and they just provide a revenue stream to the city. The machine takes the pictures. Most people plead guilty, and they split it in a way that gives actually most of the revenue to that company, by the way. But then the city gets lots and lots of money for it, and most people don't know what to do. And again, it's like the radar. They feel that they're fighting a machine, that there's no way to win, and so they fight it, and they don't even bother. They just pay it.
Well, how do you argue against a yellow light?
Well, I remember you had one of these, didn't you?
No, we're not going to talk about that.
No, I remember.
Yeah.
And I got that dismissed, of course, as I always do.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the same kind of problem where I went over the background of it, and I asked the officer which machine was it, and let's see the calibration.
Oh, yeah, there's a person that's tied into that traffic light that has to show up. It's not a cop.
That's right.
You get that picture, that traffic light picture. Oh, it could be a cop. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I was thinking in terms of the cameras.
It's actually a video now.
Right.
And they sit there very smug, and they show you the video. And it will very often seem to attest your car going through the red light.
Yeah, it always shows you halfway through.
Hell yeah.
Always.
So it's like, what are you going to say to this, dum-dum? You're screwed, So I deal with the issue of timing and calibration and the design and the engineering and a lot of other factors. And, one of the things that's very troublesome about this, and this is in the Constitution, they say that, you have the right to face your accuser. So we don't have secret trials in the United States, and we don't have people like the Wizard of Oz standing behind the curtain, okay? But if you think about it in this case, you're essentially testifying as the machine. A cop does come and play the video, and he represents, the state or the police force or whatever you want to say, but he wasn't there. The witness against you is the machine, and that's not fair because you can't cross-examine a machine. Crazy.
So what happens then?
Well, what happens is most people don't fight. I come in and make a fight, and the judge is like, okay, calm down.
And here's what you also have to keep in mind. The majority of the people who get traffic tickets, no matter what kind, they handle it themselves when there are a myriad of options, as Adam has explained, to get it reduced or to get it gone completely.
Right.
You have to be able to go into court with your evidence. The ticket we talked about with the speed traps earlier, when we beat that one, we drove out to the location. Nothing was posted because we knew what the standard was. There was no traffic speed limits posted on either direction. The road was wide. We were able to create an argument as far as the commonsensical speed limit that you're allowed to apply. And that was that. The common sense comes in. Here we have a machine versus a person. And how are you going to force a machine on somebody? And also the person who represents the company or the police who represents the county.
No, they're not a true witness. They weren't there.
And they don't know about all this stuff.
Even if they do, they were not there. They are not the witness against you because they were not present at the scene of the crime.
Why do they have to be present?
Well, because the person that accuses you is supposed to face you in court. And they're supposed to be the victim of your crime or a reasonable witness to your crime.
So that means the machine is the witness against you.
Right. It's actually correct.
And this human person who shows up for the machine speaks for the machine.
Yeah, but they can't testify correctly because they're not at the scene of what happened.
On the day of the ticket.
Yeah. They're playing back a recording. So they may have technical skills, but they didn't witness what happened. They didn't witness you speeding.
So that person there is the machine then who's talking.
Well,
Since he represents the machine, he in essence is the machine.
I have made these arguments successfully in front of a judge more than once. That this is not appropriate. I want to face the accuser. The judge points to the box. I go, that's not the accuser. That's a machine. I don't want to hear about this. And I make a few comments about George Orwell, and next thing you know, ticket dismissed.
That's it. So the point being to any ticket is the fortitude and willingness to fight it.
Right.
And because traffic court is 99% people showing up for themselves, giving some sort of story, they're at a disadvantage because they don't know how to argue legalese in the terms of what would get them out of the problem.
And it's worse, I think, that a lot of the people having very little experience with court get really scared.
Now you had one
I
today.
see people stuttering
with
and freaked out.
the diamond lane, right?
Right.
And the cop had to remember that from like months earlier.
It actually happened almost a year ago.
A year ago.
10 months.
And he would not settle with you outside of court because...
Yeah, this is very strange. Most of the cops that I've dealt with, by the way, in terms of interacting with police, I would say most of them have been very courteous. Seriously. In all these years, I've only had one or two that were like extra nasty. Most of them are very reasonable. You have to remember, it's not coming out of their salary or something. So technically, they don't really care. They really don't. It's like, yeah, whatever. They're getting a break from, walking the streets or whatever, going to court. A lot of them go to court with their uniform on. A lot of them don't. A lot of them come to court with a suit. They want to just be like, professional looking and without their badge and all that good stuff. But the bottom line is that, before the hearings, as everyone's getting organized, I will go talk to the cop. And I have my ticket, so I know his name, of what I'm working on. I'll say is Officer so-and-so here. And, you can see that they don't remember the ticket at all. They don't. And that's good, And when I start to talk about what I'm going to do and what I think and defend, almost all of them are willing to compromise and to try to work something out and let it settle or whatever. A lot of them will tell you, you know what? I don't even remember this. I'm just going to dismiss it, And under those circumstances, obviously, that's a good thing. What happened today was I had a cop who was kind of having, he was professional, but he kind of had an attitude.
And he told you his boss said no settles.
Very interesting. He told me that his captain, who's like his boss, as you say, told him, you got to go through with everything. He was told not to make settlements. Most of them, you get the impression, don't care. But I think there is some statistical thing going on. And for example, this guy, that his superior officer told him that it's the policy of the department to fight the tickets. And he didn't want to make a settlement with me. So we went to trial. And I think I came off very, very well, and he came off so-so, because he's not a litigator. He's a cop. And he didn't really remember what happened because it was almost a year ago. And he was just talking in generalities, you know. I was driving my car. I think I did this. I think I did that. And when I raised certain issues, the best he could do was shrug. I'll say, isn't it true that it was raining? And he goes, I don't really remember. Okay? That's one of the reasons you gather information about things like raining. Because there's always circumstances that you can use. You never know which is going to be the right one. But in the case that I did today, the guy was accused of, my client was accused of going into the HOV lane without having any carpool, just himself. And believe it or not, that's a huge ticket. That's more than $500. But I said that it was true. I agreed. He had gone into the HOV lane, but it was to avoid getting into an accident. So he had to drive into that lane briefly to avoid hitting a car that was in front of him, which stopped short.
I found myself in a diamond lane the other day for the first time.
How?
Without even realizing I was in it.
Ooh.
And the way I found
The
my
road
way...
patterns, yeah.
Totally. And that's what it was. I was in California here. If you pay X amount of dollars, you get this little gadget.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ride some of the HOV lanes in certain areas only. And the rest of the area is diamond lanes for 2 people or more only.
So it's like the smart pass lanes.
Right. So you could go in there even with one person, and you pay a fee because you've got this little thing that goes beep beep with the transformer over the bridge you drive under. So I was driving on one of those special lanes because I got the gadget, and they had done some road work, and it was weird. There was this where the white lines in the road are at. Mm-hmm. It was the white lines were on top of a black patched line.
Really?
They had like patched the road, so the pattern was black with white lines on top of it throughout the road, all the way across.
That's fascinating.
So when I was driving in this special lane, which I was allowed to do, the lane ends, and then it turns into a diamond lane immediately. But the entire road has the black patches with the white lines. So, and I didn't see any really big signs, which was negligent on my part. But I'm looking at the road because I was kind of more concentrating on the road. What's with all these patches?
Uh-oh.
Then I look up, I go,
I'm in the diamond lane.
Jesus, I'm still in the diamond. I got the heck out, and then I thought to myself, and this is the truth, I thought to myself, if I had got a ticket right now, what my argument would have been.
Yeah.
And it just would have been
Inadvertence.
And the visual of the road. I would have had to gone down and take a picture of all that to show how the special lane merges into the diamond lane with the same visual.
Right.
And the lack of signage to wake you up to get you the heck out of the darn lane there, you know?
Right.
Because there's that patch there from like East LA to Rosemead, which is like really bad. And they're odd, but they did some road work, and it's, you know. So I was just thinking about that myself, because yeah, those diamond lane tickets are crazy. We used to have people here with dummies. They'd get a human dummy,
Yeah, blow up doll.
a blow up doll, and they'd put the belt over them, the shoulder harness.
Make it look like they had a passenger.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And then the other one was a baby in the back.
Oh,
Babies in the back seat, which is kind of interesting. Then we have the mothers
The baby on board.
Baby on board. They're pregnant, and they get a ticket, and they go, "Wow, there's 2 of us." And
Not really.
in California, you're not a real person till you come out of the garage.
You gotta be born, huh?
You got to be born, and then all of a sudden you're a viable 2-people person car type thing. You know.
Unbelievable.
So don't get all freaked out with your tickets when you get them over. You have to. You got to realize the cops have a quota or a certain amount, depending upon what their assignment is, right?
Well, this cop today made an interesting comment to the judge. He said that when he wrote the ticket, that my client didn't say anything, didn't complain in any way. And that's always been my advice, not to complain, not to say anything. And there's no inference to be drawn from that, as I pointed out to the court. The fact that you are asking the officer to see the radar gun, or that you just take the ticket quietly, that doesn't mean you're not going to fight it. And the opposite is not necessary. It would not be wise, in my opinion, to say to the cop, I'm going to fight this ticket.
I didn't do it.
And you're going to be sorry, and I'm going to drag you into court.
I'm going to fight this.
And you bite your tongue. Because I think that doesn't accomplish anything.
I never say anything.
Perfect.
I smile. How you doing? When
How you doing?
How you doing? When they go, why? I pulled
Well, they always
over.
ask you, like, yeah, do you know why I pulled you over?
No, I have no idea.
I can't believe. I thought
Really?
I was driving good.
I like to go, where the heck were you? Because sometimes they'll tell you
No,
where they were.
don't say that.
Well, I didn't even see you. Where were you? Oh, I'm over behind the tree over there. Well, good. Now he just helped me with my argument that I'm
Yeah.
going to beat him.
There you go.
My point is, I smile. I'm pleasant. I'm not going to tell him that I'm going
Being
to fight the
courteous
hell
goes
out of
a
it.
long way.
I'm not going to tell him I'm going to pick up the phone and call offices of Adam8
Right.
and get this thing beat, because otherwise he'll be keeping it in the front of his mind. Oh, he's going to fight this, so I better make a special note about
Now,
this.
I've
one.
got to tell you, seriously, there are billboards all around town that show something like ticket doctor payment, something that they're
Yeah.
going to do your ticket for $99, okay?
Mhm.
And I've seen these guys in court. And in fact, I saw that group and some of the other ones in court today. And because of the way they work, they're only charging you $99. The way that they make it worthwhile is by consolidating. So here's a hearing that we had today, and this lawyer came in, and I think he had about 8 cases. Just
Okay.
this one lawyer. And if you think that he's giving any special attention to your case, he's not.
Forget about
He
it.
had 8 cases, okay? I watched him zip through them, and he pled guilty to most of them, okay? So he wasn't pulling out what I'm pulling out, which is a full court press and fighting the ticket very aggressively, getting to know the story, the background, all the circumstances, and trying to find a way, any way, to make it go away.
And that's it, poking holes in the scenario of the ticket. Even if nothing negative exists, you can still create a viable story, not a lie, but a viable story for a defense. Maybe you didn't know the signs weren't posted and it's required to be posted.
Right.
You know, that was the one we beat with the cops sitting in the parking lot after the school there. Nothing was posted. People don't know that.
This guy in particular today was very, very tough because he had, let me think, he had so many tickets to do. He had like at least 8.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea that he would have given real special attention to any of them and he would have really focused on any of them is ridiculous, is naive.
And that's the advantage of having a lawyer in your corner.
Right.
So you have to remember the law offices of Adam Michael Sachs. We do family law, divorces, custody, restraining orders, step-parent adoptions.
Oh, dear.
We like those. That always makes people happy. Traffic, criminal, DUI, drugs, possession, use, dealing. We do that. Any kind of civil suits, breach of contracts, real estate, commercial, entertainment contracts, copyright disputes. We do it all. We're a full-service law firm. And our number, once again, is
1-800-340-7320. That's 1-800-340-7320.
give us a call. We're happy to help you. Adam answers the phone. He doesn't let anybody else touch the phone. He's that's my phone. Don't touch my phone.
Don't touch phone.
And thank you for tuning in. Please keep the letters and cards coming. And we really appreciate it. And have a wonderful, safe week. And we'll see you next week.
Take it easy.